Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ellie and I'm from the team at Glenara Libraries, and I'm delighted to see so many faces here this afternoon, and Glenara Libraries is delighted and Glenara City Council to host this book launch this afternoon. Before we go any further, Glenara City Council acknowledges the Bunurong Bunurong and the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Eastern Kulin Nation as traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we gather today. Pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge and uphold the continuing relationship to land, waterways and community. We are here this afternoon, of course, to celebrate the launch of The Strength of Hope, a Holocaust Survivor's Guide to Love and Life by Abram Goldberg and Fiona Harris. Avenue Bookstore, Elstonwick, are here as today's bookseller. So if you haven't grabbed your copy already, they'll be here after today's formal proceedings. Also speaking today are Charlie Goldberg, son of Abram Goldberg, Helen Greenberg, daughter of Abram, and Jane Josem, CEO of the Melbourne Holocaust Museum. And with that, I'll hand over to Jane. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. This day has been a long time coming, and isn't it marvellous to be here? Avram Goldberg has been involved in the Melbourne Holocaust Museum since close to its opening some 38 years ago. It was something he embarked on as a retirement activity, but so passionate is he about the work that we do that it became a major focus of his life thereafter. He's served as a museum guide and survivor speaker, reaching tens of thousands of school students over that time and impacting them with his very powerful story. He's been integral behind the scenes as well as a treasurer, board director, member of its executive committee and a life governor. Avram has been recognised by our government with an Order of Australia medal for his volunteering activities. Those who meet Avram Goldberg don't forget him. And I can say the same of those who meet Avram and the lovely Cesia, his beautiful wife, who together they recently celebrated their 75th wedding anniversary. Mazel tov. Now, Avram has a very serious and painful story to share. What happened to Avram and his family during the war was horrific, and it's a story that demands to be told, and a story that, in fact, his mother demanded he tell. And I always knew his story since I started the Holocaust Museum. I heard it so many times at the museum, but this book launch allows us to focus on the whole story, not just the Holocaust, but the incredible life after as well. When Martin Hughes from Affirm Press first approached us expressing his interest to publish Avram's story, I was a bit taken aback. Mostly our survivors have published their own stories. Who was this Martin? And who was Affirm Press? So I did my research. It all checked out, and then Avram and I went to meet Martin. When Martin talked about Avram, I got the opportunity to see Avram afresh. I knew Avram as a Holocaust survivor, a Bundist, a man who had buried artefacts in the Lodz Ghetto, a man passionate about our museum, and someone who always knew more than you on any Holocaust topic, which was okay, because he did know more than me, and I wasn't competing anyway. Martin saw him as an inspiring optimist whose story could inspire so many others. Martin told me that his passion was to share such stories, people overcoming great odds to do something positive with their lives, stories of resilience and hope. And while I knew this of Avram, I guess Martin just shone a different light on him. And I should have known this because actually when I created an online interactive about the material that Avram and Bono Wino had buried in the lodge, I gave it the title Strength of Hope because that was the core story. I knew it was that sense of hope that got Avram and others through their darkest days. Martin also said he wanted 50% of the book to be about Abi's life post-war, which was unusual, but I totally understood, to tell the story of what happened to him during the war, but but also to focus equally on the positive story of a man who's given so much back to the community. I also want to thank one of our volunteers, Alan Reid, who wrote and researched the first draft of Avram's war years, as this research was invaluable to the final story. I want to thank Avram for his unwavering support of the Melbourne Holocaust Museum, including donating all royalties from the sale of this book to us in support of the work that we do to keep survivors' stories alive as a catalyst for greater understanding and acceptance in the wider community. And then the masterstroke from Martin Hughes was matching Avram with the writer whom I'm about to introduce, Fiona Harris. Fiona is an award-winning Australian writer and actor. Much of her acting work and writing is in the sphere of comedy, and she's also written a number of children's books. So at first glance, this may have seemed an odd choice to ask Fiona to write a Holocaust memoir. Having spent some time with Fiona, I understand why it was an excellent choice. One of Fiona's talents is listening deeply and really trying to find the humanity in any situation. Her observational comedy is based on real people and real life situations, and there's great depth to the observations she makes through it. Fiona has written also a wonderful and inspiring account of the struggles of local sportswoman Shani Layton, demonstrating that she had the ability to capture and share powerful stories. So Fiona is passionate about getting messages across, particularly to young people, about resilience and overcoming adversity. And I can say she's done a marvellous job of researching this story, capturing Avram's unique voice, and mostly winning his trust to be able to help him share this incredible story more widely through this book, The Strength of Hope. Avram's optimism and strength shine through in this account, and the lesson he shares with us is one that inspires me. It inspires me today as I grapple with challenges, and it will inspire many, many others too. He says, "Not every day will be a sunny day. There will be overcast days, but the sun will shine again." Thank you.
Hi everybody, welcome to this very special occasion. I'm Charlie, this is Helen. I'm the very much older brother. And we're the children of Abram and Cesia. Growing up as the children of these two people has been unique and an honour. They put so much into our lives, and this is an example of what they are and who they are and what they made us, and just wonderful that it's been put down on paper, and will be able to be shared by the greater community. We're just going to read a couple of excerpts from the book, and then we'll pass the microphone back to the two important people here. Okay. Auschwitz, 1996. I throw back a glass of whiskey to steady my nerves. Sasha's eyes are full of tears and she's trembling. I squeeze her hand to let her know that I feel what she is feeling. I remember what she is remembering. Our children, Charlie and Helen, are here too, and Charlie's father-in-law, Börje, has driven down from Sweden to chauffeur us around. He has parked the car a little way back from the entrance to the camp. And although Sasha's knee is giving her a lot of pain, she is determined to walk. The quietness and the beauty of the clear blue sky day is unnerving. As the memories and visions begin to flood back, I close my eyes to let them in. The cattle trucks lined up along the tracks, their human cargo inside, the gaunt faces of painfully thin people staring through the barbed wire, with haunted, empty expressions, dogs barking, people crying, shouting and talking in anxious whispers. People's nerves were at breaking point, and I can still feel the atmosphere of terror all around me. And the smell, the most terrible smell, a smell I now know was burning flesh. When a voice rises above all the others in my mind. I recognise it instantly, my mum. This is where we shared our last precious moments together, where she spoke her final words to me. Abram, do everything humanly possible to survive. And when you do, wherever you find yourself, you must tell people what happened here so that it can never happen again.
A hand slips into mine, bringing me back to the present. Cesia stares at me with deep sadness in her eyes. She knows where I've been these last few moments. Come, she says quietly. My wife can hardly take a step without wincing these days, but she refuses help. This is something she must do. All these years later, she is going to walk into the place of free woman. The five of us make our way slowly down the rusted railway tracks as Cesia struggles to recall details. Did I get off the train here or here? She said softly. Did we line up on the side or that? Helen takes her hand and clutches it tightly. Rouse, Rouse, Cesia says as a memory comes into sharp focus. I recognise the words as the ones the Nazis shouted at us as they slid open the heavy door of the cattle trucks. Out, out. I thought we had entered a lunatic asylum, Cesia tells our children, tears streaming down her cheeks. This has been the saddest day of my life, Helen says. Charlie agrees, but he is angry. He can't believe how close the town is. Why didn't the people there do or say something, he asked. They must have known. To say they didn't seems impossible. I say a silent Kaddish for the more than 1 million souls tortured, tormented and executed here, and we stand in silence with our arms around each other. Then I begin to talk. The words, slow at first, begin to pour out of my mouth and I can't stop them. That was where they lined us up. Here is where I watched my mother get taken away. This is where Mengele stood with his baton, waving us left and right. As the memories tumble out, our children cry and hold Cesia and me close. I know why I feel the need to say everything out loud. This was the promise I made to my mother all these years ago, that I would always tell, that I would always remember.
Today is the exact date, Cesia says. I arrived here as a 15-year-old girl. The pain in her knee is getting worse by the minute, but she refuses to stop moving. Cesia continues into the camp, the same camp that took her parents away from her. Every step is agony, but the emotional pain is far greater than the physical could ever be. When we ask again if we should bring the car, she refuses. I will show these cruel beasts that I will walk now and when I want, and how and when I want, she says firmly. Cesia's pride and determination is good for her children to see. They now understand how their mother, a petite, shy teenager, when she was sent here all those years ago, had the mental strength to survive this hell. I am careful not to stumble on the bumpy, uneven road as we walk. I may be an old man now, but I walk taller and stronger than I ever have before, unaided and proud through the entrance. It is a far cry from how I first entered this place 52 years ago, a place so deeply embedded in my psyche that it will always be a part of me, a place called Auschwitz.
Cesia, I'm going to write a book about my life. Finally, she will cry, clapping her hands together. Many people, including my wife, have been pestering me to write my life story for years now, but I've always refused. A book of my life, I would say? It's so long and there is so much to tell that I would need 10 volumes. In this book, I will tell stories about my life growing up in Lodz, Poland, about my teenage years before the war, and about life in the ghetto. There will be stories from my time in Auschwitz, from my exciting, sometimes dangerous post-war travels through Europe, and of course, the most wonderful story of all, meeting a young girl in Belgium after the war, and how we would go on to spend the next 7.5 decades together in Europe and Australia. At just 150 centimetres tall, I may be a small man, but I have lived a very big life. For that, I feel incredibly grateful. Some find it hard to understand how I have kept my positivity and how I can see the good in people after what I went through. Maybe when you read my story, you will see that I have always been a lucky man. So this book is a journey that has taken a long time to get to, but what a story it is. What an incredible, incredible journey we have all gone on to actually work through and understand what has made our father the man who he is today. And he is a giant of a man. And how fortunate are we that we have met Fiona Harris. Fiona is a unique individual. As many of you know, my dad can be quite stubborn and quite determined and detailed. But Fiona, with her patience, her nurturing, and her amazing ability to bring out the real depth of who my father is, we are eternally grateful. We love the book and we love you. Thank you.
Thank you for making me cry. Okay, before we get to the main event, because I know we all just want to hear from Abram, so I'm going to try and get through this very quickly. I just wanted to thank you all for coming along today to support us and our book, and especially want to thank my family, Finn, Abby and Mike, for their support every day over the past year, helping me, listening to me, supporting me through writing this, and for putting up with me saying you're not allowed to complain about anything because of the subject matter I was dealing with every day. When Martin from Affirm Press called me to ask if I wanted to write the memoir of a 97-year-old Holocaust survivor, the first words out of my mouth were, I would be honoured, and the next thing I said was, does he know I'm not Jewish? I'm a white woman who grew up in the western suburbs of Melbourne. I attended an all-girls Catholic college. I didn't know the first thing about being Jewish or what it meant to grow up in a world where my family and community had suffered hundreds of years of persecution. So how could a girl raised in a safe, free, lucky country like Australia possibly comprehend the horrors, trauma and pain suffered by a Holocaust survivor? I couldn't. Also, the stuff I'd been writing up until then was very different. As Jane said before, I'd spent the last 20 years writing light-hearted comedy and books for kids. This was very, very different, which I pointed out to Martin, but he insisted he'd thought of me for the job because he wanted a lot of heart in the book. And he said he knew that was something I always have in my books and scripts. He also said Abram wasn't the kind of person who cared about race, ethnicity, religion or age. He just wanted to find the right person to write his story with him. That is Abram in a nutshell. After all he's endured, after all he has suffered and lost, Abram is a man who never judges, discriminates or hates. And Martin was right, because soon after that I learned that Abram, as he always says, there's only one race and that's the human race. Yes. The first time I met Abram was through a computer screen. It was lockdown number, who knows what, in Melbourne. There was a Zoom between Abram, Charlie, Helen and me. I was very, very nervous, but as soon as those faces popped up on my laptop, there was nothing but warmth and kindness emanating from all of them, and I relaxed. And we talked and we smiled a lot on that first Zoom. And thankfully they gave me the tick of approval, thank you. And I was overwhelmed with mixed emotions because putting this extraordinary man's story into words was an enormous honour and responsibility. And I had to do him, his family and the Jewish community proud. When I went to his house to talk to him again, I was also very nervous. But they all made me feel so very welcome, and I knew this was going to be a wonderful relationship. Our weekly interviews at his kitchen table were around an hour to 2 hours each time, and a highlight of my week. I wrote lots of questions, breaking them up into different stages of his life, and then I'd ask them in person, or if we couldn't get together, Charlie would record him on his phone and send them to me. I also watched a lot of Abe's video testimonials from the Holocaust Museum. I read a lot of books, including the Lodz Ghetto book that's on the table there. And did a ton of research because obviously it was very important that I learn as much as I could about the era as well as the person I was writing about. Spending time with each other in social situations we've all had has been incredibly important for the book too. Not just because the Harris-McLeish family has fallen in love with the Goldbergs, but because it was a great way to see how the family react, interact, and the love that there is there for Abe and his love for them. When it came to getting information about Abe's feelings and emotions, that was a bit harder because Abe is a very practical, facts and figures kind of person. So I knew it was going to be a challenge to draw those very painful and intimate details from him, and we needed vodka to get us through a couple of those sessions. Thank you to Charlie for providing the world's best vodka. Cesia also needed to be a big part of the story, and Martin wanted the love story between Abram and Cesia to be a big part of it. And so obviously that is in the, and it's Cesia's book as much as it is Abram's. We're very different people, Abram and I, but the one thing we have in common is to share his story as far and wide as it can go because it must be heard and it needs to be heard. Young people, middle-aged, senior citizens, everyone should read Abram's story and learn about the man he became and is today, a beautiful, positive, caring, strong father, husband and friend who's never taken a single moment of his life for granted. He's the most extraordinary human being I've ever met, and I feel truly blessed and grateful that he and his family have come into my life. When you know that Abram has suffered in his life and you see the happy, positive man he is now, I'm sure you'll be as amazed, impressed and besotted with him as I am. When I asked Abram, how did you cope with lockdown? He said, "It's okay. Why should I complain? I have a roof over my head, food in my fridge and my family outside the window waving at me. I am safe and loved. What more could I want?" This is Abram. And now I have the very special honour of introducing you all to the man himself, Mr. Abram Goldberg. Hi.
Hi, Fiona.
Now, as Abram and a few people here know, I'm very jet-lagged as I got back from Ireland 2 days ago. So Abram said, "What are you going to do if I start falling asleep? You're going to kick me."
Oh, well, you're far away from me now.
No,
I can't kick you.
I did that on purpose. So, Abram, I know you've been doing your talks at the Holocaust Centre for students for many years, but how do you feel now knowing that so many more people are going to hear your story?
Well, this is my purpose in life. That not to let people forget what actually happened. As long as we are still alive, some survivors, and as long as I am able to, and I promise, I will never be silent. I want people to know what actually happened. When I was liberated, I hope the world will have learned and will be a better place to live. But unfortunately, we can see what's going on in the world. And this pains me very much. Well, I hope that my children, my grandchildren, my beautiful great-granddaughter will be able to live, and all you children and great-children and grandchildren, and maybe also great-grandchildren, will live in a better world.
Hear, hear. Now, these are your parents up here behind us. Can you tell everyone here, there's a lot in the book about Abram's family growing up in Lodz. Can you just tell us who was in your family when you were growing up?
Well, I was the youngest of 4 siblings. Well, I had 3 sisters. One was 2 years older, next one was 4, and my oldest sister, who married just before the outbreak of the war, was 7 years older. And from my all extended family, the sole survivors was my sister, who went to the Eastern Poland, what was occupied by the Soviet Union, and myself. Well, I could talk about it, but the rest you will have to read in the book.
Now, Abram, you were 15. There are your sisters up there. There they are. You were 15 when the war broke out. And when the war broke out first, can you remember what you and your family and friends thought was going to happen?
Oh, well, firstly, we were sure that the Polish army will be able to match the German army, how wrong we were. Polish army was no match for the modern, with the new tactics in warfare, and Poland will be defeated in practically no time. Except it lasted 3 weeks because Warsaw did resist. Well, and then it's history and more. Well, I have to say again, because it will take me too long to explain, you will have to read it in some book.
But that was a shock for you, wasn't it? Because your father did say to you, you had talked about feeling like you had a chance, that the Polish army had a chance of defeating them, and then it was a shock.
Well, of course, it was a shock. It was not only a shock for myself, it was a shock for whole Poland.
Yeah, and how quickly it happened.
And how quickly.
Yeah.
Because only when the war broke out was the 1st of September, a Friday, and and it was and Lodz was occupied a week later.
Yeah.
The following Friday.
And we've got some photos here of the Lodz Ghetto, and I'm just going to click through them. Because I want you to tell people here what that was like living in that ghetto. Because how long were you in the ghetto for?
Oh, when the ghetto was closed on the 1st of May 1940 till the 25th, actually, of August 1944. But when I arrived at Auschwitz, it was the 29th.
And the conditions in the ghetto were absolutely terrible. Can you just tell us a little bit about?
Well, I know, I'm sure that a lot of people know what actually happened. 25% of the population of the ghetto died of hunger, starvation, and of course, when hunger sets in, diseases sets in. And, well, the history you will be able to read about the ghetto a lot in my memoirs, and there is a lot to be written about the Lodz Ghetto. But what you will read in my memoirs is a lot what you never heard of.
There is a lot of detail I didn't even know, I had not heard about the Lodz Ghetto. That was not something that is ever, as far as what I've seen.
But it wasn't during the war, Lodz.
Yeah.
It was Litzmannstadt, because this part of Poland was incorporated into Germany.
Yeah. And the conditions were absolutely atrocious. Can you tell everyone here why you think you survived those terrible conditions for 4 years in that ghetto when so many didn't?
Well, maybe I had a little bit more to eat than the normal human being who suffered enormously.
Because of the fruit trees?
Not the fruit tree, because, well, again, I have to mention it. You will read it in the book. Because on the 10th of December 1939, where we lived actually in Baluti, in the main thoroughfare, on the Zgerska Street, Ulica, well, we were deported to the first actual concentration camp, what was in Radogorz. Again, you will read about it in my book, but I can't explain everything. And then we were deported, 10,000 people. 5,000 to Krakow and 5,000 to Lublin. Well, and the rest also. I and my father and my mother came back, and again I have to mention it. The rest you will read in the book, because it's quite a story.
It's quite a story. And when, in 1944, you didn't know they were liquidating the ghetto, what did they tell you they were doing? And then you proposed something to your
we
mum.
sense it, and we know. It depends who. We knew. Yes. My circle, the Bund, we knew that this is the end of the ghetto. Mm-hmm.
And instead of handing yourself
in June, when there was certain deportation, we didn't know where, but it was still to Helmer, because Helmer knows our story, but we will read it in the book also, because I have some documents. The only document was left from Helmer, the first that came and occupied Poland. And Helmer wasn't Helmer. It was Kulmhof. Well, so we didn't know, but we started to suspect in 1942 that when the people were deported, it's not what they say to the east, but because clothes, a lot of the clothes came back to be sorted out in the Lodz Ghetto. And I will stop at it.
So that's where people were finding clothes from their loved ones, and they started to realise what was happening. Yeah.
Yes.
And you and your mum, so when you realised that they were liquidating the ghetto, you wanted to hide? You didn't want to hand yourself in because you knew what might happen?
Well, no, because we in Bund told that we have to hide. Well, some of the Bundes did build bunkers. I went and saw one bunker. I see it's not too safe, so I decided to find my own hiding places.
And it was for you and your mum, because it was just you and your mum at that
Yes.
stage. Yeah. And can you tell everyone where you found the place for you and your mum to hide?
Oh well, it's a bit different. What is in the book? It's not a bit so correct, but it's correct. That is nothing. You see, so I like to be correct.
So you don't. But they will know that.
Oh, well, yes. A lot of people heard part of my story.
Yeah.
You see? So, well, I decided to hide with my mother. Mm-hmm. Bono and his family did hide also somewhere.
And you were 19 at this point? 20?
Yes.
Yeah, 19.
I was 19 years of old. I did find a hiding place in an attic. Not opposite, but in the same building where we actually lived. Well, and there, when 1942, you see, when so great the deportation from the ghetto from January to May, when 56,000 were deported, I was actually told by my father that I should help to hide my mother, and he will hide my two aunties, but will live in the next building with 6 young children. Well, unfortunately, my father and the children were caught. It's a reason also, well, you find it in the book. And I was able to save my mother from hiding. And with food, yes, because I told you we were deported in 1939. My father and my mother came back from Krakow. My father supposed to go afterwards when we will settle back in Lodz, to go back to Krakow and bring our 2 sisters. But it couldn't eventuate because it was no time, because the ghetto was hermetically closed, and my father couldn't go and bring his daughters and my sisters back to the Lodz Ghetto. Well, and the rest is history, and also a lot of explanations why is in the book.
Yeah, there's a lot more detail in the book. Now, when you were in Auschwitz, is there a moment you can remember in the camp, or how you've told me that you weren't scared when you were at Auschwitz? Tell everyone how you said you were feeling when you were there.
Well, my mother realized immediately that she will not survive Auschwitz. And when the scream of the SS, men on one side, the women and children on the other side. This was when my mother realized. And I will tell you, you will read it in the book. So those few moments that we were together, her last words still ringing in my mind was, Abram, when you will survive, wherever you will find yourself, you should tell people what actually happened to the Jewish people, so people will be able not to see the world will be a better world. But like what Jane said, unfortunately, you see, you are witnesses in the younger generation, the 2nd and 3rd generation. In many cases, the 4th generation know better now. Well, the world is in an awful situation. And when we got those extremists in power in certain countries, we have to be on our guard and see to it that it will never be repeated anywhere in the world.
Yeah, absolutely. And when the war finished, Abram, you had quite a few adventures, which are all in the book. But you eventually ended up in Belgium.
Yes.
And I think we have a photo here of young 21-year-old Abram after the war with his friends. There you are, look at you. Dapper thing. And can you...
Some of you know them.
Some of you what?
Some of you. There are people here that were in Belgium, and some of them they immigrated to Australia.
Really? Someone here is from Belgium who was there at that time. Wow. Oh, wow. Well, there you go. You'll recognise a lot of stories in the book. Can you tell us about when you got to Belgium and you met a very special person there? Who was that?
Cesia.
Who's that?
Well.
And you were 21, 22, and Cesia was 17.
17 years old. And she came with her sister
Yeah.
and the sister's husband, and with the
Where were you?
with the two brothers also.
Yeah.
And here in the room is now also one person who married one of the brothers.
Oh, you're kidding.
It's Esther Breitberg.
Wow. That's amazing. Hi. Yes. Big clap. So you were playing ping pong.
Table tennis.
Sorry,
like I said
table
today.
tennis.
And,
And you're in the Bund.
yes, in Bund. And,
You're playing table tennis.
table tennis.
And what happened?
Yes, and I walked in.
Yeah.
I glanced at them. You see, well, and I saw Cesia. I didn't but I went on playing.
Oh. But you thought, who's that beautiful girl?
Yes. I came I smuggled into Belgium.
Yep.
And, I will have plenty of time.
And then the romance began.
Yes.
It's all
Not immediately.
No. Because you had a table tennis game to finish.
But yes.
Now, when you came to Australia with your wife at that point, who is up there, look, that's when you were dating and in love. Look at you. Not that you're not in love now, you are. But that's in Belgium.
Yes.
That's in Belgium.
Yes. I was there in
Gorgeous.
Frankishan where we were on camp.
Yeah, there was a lot of camps. The Bund had a lot of youth camps.
Yes.
And then when you came to Australia, can you tell us what was your attitude when you were coming to Australia? What did you think you wanted to do with your life when you got to Australia?
Well, I was sure this is my place where I'm going to live the rest of my life.
Yeah. And you had a positive attitude towards it.
Well, of course, I've had always a positive attitude. And I knew here we're going to build our future family. And here they are. Charlie was born.
Your senior son.
Yes, well, more than senior, just. I told him this when he turned 60. He didn't like it, but he had no choice.
Now, before Charlie cries. Now, one of the most extraordinary things that everyone who knows Abram knows, one of the most extraordinary things about you is your memory. At 97, you can remember dates, names and places from 70 years ago when I can barely remember last week. Why do you think it is that you've been able to keep your memory so sharp for all these years?
Because I'm lucky.
Lucky, yes.
And luck is it why I'm here now.
Yeah, luck. You talk about luck.
I never spent a single day in a hospital.
Bravo, says Cesia.
Cesia, I can't say this. But she's spent a lot. But here she is also, at 93 of age.
You call her the bionic woman.
Yes, yes, she is.
Yeah.
Not we call her, but she is.
But
and I hope for many more years.
Yes, we all do. So you do talk a lot about luck, that it's a lot to do with luck because you say your survival was all about luck.
Of course it's luck.
Yeah.
Because, it's no secret. Because all Jews in occupied Europe, and this was 21 countries, every Jew, what was 1 day old, and as old we were at the time, we all had a death sentence. And here I am, and on the other side of the world, at 97, and in October I'm turning to be 98.
Don't look a day over 90, Abram.
Now, what?
70, I meant 70.
Well, it's better.
Now, what would you say? This is the last question, and then if anyone has any questions, we've got some roving microphone people down here who are going to come. My daughters, basically. What would you say, to people who complain or are negative about things in life? What is your response to that?
Oh, well, it's like making their life miserable.
Exactly. And what's the thing you say about the sun?
Well, we have always to be positive in life. And this, when I'm speaking to students, my final message is always of hope. When I tell them, firstly, that there are no races. There's only one race, the human race. No difference of the color of our skin or the shape of our eyes or the color of our hair. What has one human being has also another. In the end of the message, that when I will finish the study, I will grow up, and I hope I will have families. But I have always to remember that not every day in their life is going to be a sunny day. There will be days what will be overcast. And the present generation can see it and feel it with the pandemic. But always after an overcast day, the sun will always shine again.
Thank you, Abram. So, does anyone have any questions? Does anyone want to ask anything? Oh, hello, there's one down here. Girls, come on, quick.
Thank you. Abram, congratulations on your memoir. I hope it's only the first chapter. I hope there's time to write another 3.
This is my nephew.
I've met him.
Yes, he's the younger one.
Yeah.
I happen to be the favorite nephew. Okay. I am the son of Abram's surviving sister. The question is, Abram, you had hoped in the Bund for something that the world should have been wanting to do. What was that?
You said there was something you were hoping for in the Bund that you wanted to happen in the world. What was that?
That the world will be a democratic country. The world will be a good place for every human being to live. And this was when my father first entered the Bund. It was the beginning of the 20th century. And this, when he, from a very religious family, what you will read in the book also, well, you see, he was a rebel. And here we are, in our 4th generation, and I hope my great-granddaughter will follow the steps of her Bubba, it's our daughter, and her great-grand Zaida. I hope. Because this is our aim. Because equality and understanding and seeing that every human being in the world will never go hungry and never will be exposed to terrorism and murder.
Yeah, well said. Is there another question?
Of all the sad and important things you've said today, one of the sort of most significant things I've heard is that the author had not heard of the Lodz Ghetto, had not grown up knowing about the Holocaust. And what are your thoughts on
I knew about the
importance of
Holocaust.
education of people that aren't Jewish? And what are your thoughts on getting the word out to people when there's such a gap in the community?
Well, I definitely knew about the Holocaust, and I was someone who had watched and read a lot and watched a lot of documentaries, but I'd never heard. That's why I was surprised, because I had read and watched a lot about the Holocaust, but never had heard of the Lodz Ghetto. And For me, it was a huge education. Just learning about that book, which Charlie gave me, it was just so amazing, and I learnt so much from that. And I would say that, as I said in my intro speech, that's why I think it's so important that so many different types of people, all ages, all ethnicities, all races, religions, whatever, should read this book, because it is something that they should know about, and they should know that these things happen, and they should know about places like the Lodz Ghetto and what went on there. So, yeah, my answer to that is this book is one of the ways I think people can learn what happened and learn from it, hopefully. Yeah. Is there a question over this side so Abby can give the microphone to someone? Anyone over there? No? Any other questions? Oh, there's one right up the back.
Fiona, you spoke at my high school this time last year.
Oh, hi.
And you were talking about the process of writing the book. What do you think was the greatest challenge for you as someone who is non-Jewish writing a story like this in terms of the complexity that you were exposed to?
Well, I think the main challenge for me was, well, the main worry was how it would be perceived, first of all, because who am I to write this book? And I thought there might be a bit of pushback from that. But then I had to kind of put that aside and just focus on Abram and decide that actually I can't worry about that. I just have to worry about getting this man's story right. And as far as a challenge in that respect, I guess it's been very challenging emotionally at times, because it's, immersing myself in this subject matter for day after day for a whole year. It's a lot, and I've had a lot of tears, and it's been quite full on emotionally, but then there's always this happy face smiling at me across the kitchen table, which makes everything better. But Abram, I think the only challenge that I faced in terms of getting it down on the page, because I had all the information, Abram remembers everything, and there's a lot of documentation, there's a lot of information, but it was getting Abram to open up about his feelings. As we said before, he's a very facts and figures person, so it was the only challenge, I would say, is getting that out of him, digging in and getting Abram to open up in that way. But once he did, it all came out, and it was, I think that hopefully had a lot to do with him trusting me. But initially, yes, that was a challenge, I would say. Two more questions?
From the age of, when my children reached the age of 12, and I have 4, I brought them to the Holocaust Museum to learn about what happened, to learn about the important things that happened in history. Could you just tell us what you tell students that they can do to personally prevent or help to prevent these things happening again?
Oh, well, to be themselves and try to get a lot of knowledge, because it's such a vast knowledge available about the Holocaust, because even the Germans got hundreds and hundreds of millions of documents, and the documents and the testimonies of the survivors. Well, and I had in the center came a German professor, a lady, and she wrote a book. And I am a part of this book also in German. I've got this book at home, you see. And she saw me at work in the museum. And she wrote quite a bit about my story, not much, but a lot. And the most important part that is now that Germany got those anti-racial laws, you see, because it's just happened when Abbas said the Palestinian got 50 Holocausts. Well, what a shame And what a lie. And this pains me. And this pains me. Because the action should have been much more than it was.
But you would tell your students as well about
Okay,
tolerance,
yes.
tolerance,
Well,
acceptance.
tolerance, yes. Because when you listen to one-sided story, you see, and with those lies, because actually the German propaganda minister, Nazi propaganda minister, Goebbels said, you drum in people's mind a lie so long since I start to believe it's true. And this we have to guard against and see that never will be repeated.
Yeah, well said.
I remember my children, what stood out to them was when you said to them, never stand for bullying and never be a bully yourself.
Yeah.
It was one thing that really stuck with them.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. We'll just have one more, I think.
Hello, everyone, and hello, great Uncle Abram. My question is, your hope seems to be, and hope and optimism is a superpower that you have that's brought you to this day and helped everyone who's come into contact with you. But where did you get that superpower from? Did you have that sort of hope and optimism as a child? Where did you get it from? Who cultivated it, or did it grow over time?
It's in the book from my family.
Okay,
And this is also my nephew's son.
He said hello, great Uncle Up.
Yeah.
Old.
Yes. Yes, see.
So you just you have to read.
You heard it. Your
No,
own
it's-
daughter wrote about a bit, and it wasn't the Jewish news publicized quite a few years ago.
Basically, in the book, there's a lot of information about Abram's childhood, and in the book, you will see where that hope and optimism came from. For his parents, a massive part of it came from his parents. The Bund, I think, that those factors definitely played into it. But you'll have to read the book. Who was over here? Yep.
Hello. I just want to say, Cesia and Abram, you're such a wonderful inspiration to all the generations, and we're very proud of you. Thank you.
You're an inspiration.
Well, yes. And this used to be two twin brothers. One brother was the champion of the Commonwealth in boxing. It's a Henry brother.
Sorry, yes.
I recognize your voice.
My name is Peter Wise, and I am so happy that I can call him my friend, and I know this gentleman. He has been an inspiration for me and my family, and I always look up to Cesia and Avram and his family. He has been just a wonderful man, a wonderful family, and I'm proud to say he's my friend, and I'll always thank you. Thank you.
That's beautiful. Thank you. Oh, I'm crying now, honestly. It's not going to take much with my jet lag. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
Well, and here I want to thank some special people who came. Apart from my family, friends, it's a friend what I made here in Australia. He is a Dent family, what I met in the Holocaust Center over 25 years ago, and we still friends. We were so still friends. We were on the happy occasion and also on sad occasion. And also, I have here from Belgium, it's a little girl what I wrote in the book, wrote in the book. I'm not going to repeat it, but she can't be here, you see, because she's not so well.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And also, I want to thank my carers.
Yes. Stand up, stand up.
Stand up.
Stand up, Marsha.
And
There she is at the back.
well, all who are here, because we became so close, like family. And I always, when I got people coming to my house, doesn't matter for what, and we talk, and we become friends for life. And here, Andrea, with the 2 kids and husband. And also Basha, who is in my story. Well, it's very interesting. She's Polish. And when I have a new carer, usually I am asking him where they are born, because I can see they are not born in Australia. She said in Poland. Well, I said, well, which town in Poland? Well, she said, oh, you will not know. And she said, Kolo. And you know, and I said, oh, Kolo. Wasn't it Kolo near the first death camp in Poland? She said, yes. She said, you are the first survivor who knew where Kolo was. Kolo was only 20 kilometers from Chelmno, the first death camp. And we had talking, we're still talking. And the story is also in the book.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, Laura. Oh, thank you. You're beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.